राधाकान्ता नमस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गुरुतुचे नमः नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनेति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवाद पश्चातदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. We are starting to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Adi Lila, first chapter, first verse. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the combined form of Sri Radha and Krishna. He is the he, he is the life of those devotees who strictly follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami are the two principal followers of Srila Swarupa Damodar Goswami, who acted as the most confidential servitor of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Vishwambhara in his early life. A direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami was Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami was Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami stands as the direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The direct disciple of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who accepted Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti as his servitor. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur accepted Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who in turn accepted Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the divine master of our humble self. Since we belong to his chain of disciplic succession from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this edition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita will contain nothing newly manifested by our tiny brains, but only remains of food originally eaten by the Lord Himself. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not belongs to the mundane plane of the three uh, quali- qualitative modes. He belongs to the transcendental plane beyond the reach of the imperfect sense perceptions of his life being of a life living being. Even the most erudite mundane scholar cannot approach the transcendental plane unless he submitted himself to transcendental sounds with a respective mode. For in for in that mood only can one realize the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What will be described herence therefore has nothing to do with the experimental thoughts created by the speculative habits of a innate mind. The subject matter of book is not a mental conception but a factual spiritual experience that one can realize only by accepting the line the line of disciplic succession described above. Any deviation from that that line will bewilder the reader's understanding of the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, which is a transcendental literature meant for the postgraduate study of one who has realized all the Vedic literature such as the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra and their natural commentaries such as Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. This edition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is presented for the study of sincere scholars who are really seeking the absolute truth. It is not the arrogant scholarship of a mental speculator, but a sincere effort to serve the order of a superior authority who serves in life and soul of his humble effort. It doesn't divide deviate even straightly from the revealed scriptures, and therefore anyone who follows in the disciplic line will be able to realize the essence of this book simply by the method of oral inspection. The first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with the 14 Sanskrit verses that describe the absolute truth. Then the next three Sanskrit verses describe the principal deities of Vrindavana, namely Sri Radha Madhav Madan Mohan, Sri Radha Govinda Deva, and Sri Radha Gopinath Ji. The first of the 14 verses is a symbolic representation representation of the supreme truth, and the entire first chapter is in actually devoted devoted to his single verse, the single verse, which describes Lord Chaitanya in his six different transcendental experiences. The first manifestation described is the spiritual master who appeared in two plenary parts called the initiating spiritual master and instructing spiritual masters. They are identical because both of them are phenomenal manifestations of the supreme truth. Next, describe the devotees who are divided in two classes, namely the apprentices apprentices and the graduates. Next are the incarnation avatars of the Lord, who are explained to the non-different from the Lord. These incarnations are considered as three divisions: incarnations of the potency of the Lord, incarnation of His qualities, and incarnation of His authorities. In this connection, Lord Sri Krishna direct manifestation and his manifestations for the transcendental pastimes are discussed. Next considered are the potencies of Lord, of which three principal manifestations are described. The, the concerts in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, the queen of the Dwarkadham, and highest of all, the, the damsels of Brajadhama. Finally, these are Supreme Lord Himself, who is the fo- foundation fountainhead of foundation head of all three manifestations. Lord Sri Krishna and the plenary explanation of all in category of Lord Himself, the energetic absolute truth whereas his devotees, his eternal associates, are his energies. The energy and the energetic are fundamentally one, but since their functions are differently uh, innovated, they are stimulously different also. Thus, the absolute truth is manifested in diversity in one unit. This philosophical truth, which is person the Vedanta Sutra, is called Achantya Veda Veda Tattva, or the conception of similarities, oneness, and differences. In the later portion of this chapter, the transcendental position of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and that of Srila Nityananda Prabhu are described with references to the above theistic facts. Text 1. I offered my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual master, the devotees of the Lord's increations, his plenary portions, his energetic energies, and the primeval Lord Himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. 2. I offered my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have risen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to, dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. 3. What the Upanishad describes as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord Lona's supersoul is but the localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna Himself, full with six opulences. He is the absolute truth, and none other truth is greater than or equal to him. 4. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the Son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendentally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart, resplendent with the radiance of molten gold. He, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow with no increation has ever offered before. The most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conju- conjugal love. 5. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord eternal pleasure giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, previously they separated themselves. Now, these two transcendental identities have again united in the form Sri Radha, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexions of Srimati Radha Rani, although he is Krishna himself. अब इधर आओ, कैमरा इधर है।
Text 6. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, the wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. 7. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshan, Sheshanag, and the Vishnus who lie in the Karna ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. 8. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan in the midst of the Chaturyuga, consisting of Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. 9. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose partial representation called Karunadakshay Vishnu, lying on the Karna ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all universes. 10. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of the lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. 11. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Garbhodakshay Vishnu is the super soul of all living entities and the maintainer of all the universes. Sheshanag is his further subpart. 12. Lord Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. 13. Because he is non different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. Therefore, I take shelter of him. 14. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is non different from his features as a devotee, devotional incarnation, devotional manifestation, pure devotee, and devotional energy. 15. Glory to the all merciful Radha and Madan Mohan. I am lame and ill advised, yet they are my directors, and their lotus feet are everything to me. Text 16. In a temple of jewels in Vrindavan, underneath a desire tree, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, served by their most confidential associates, sit upon an effulgent throne. I offer my humble obeisances unto them. 17. Sri Srila Gopinath, who originated the transcendental mellow of the rasa dance, stands on the shore in the Vamshivat and attracts the attention of the cowherd damsels with the sound of his celebrated flute. May they all confer upon us their benediction. 18. Glory to Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda. Glory to Advaita Acharya. Glory to all the devotees of Sri Hari, Lord Chaitanya. These three deities of Vrindavan, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopinath, have absorbed the heart and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnava, followers of Lord Chaitanya. I worship their lotus feet, for they are the lords of my heart. Purport. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta offers his respectful obeisances unto the three deities of Vrindavan, named Sri Radha Madan Mohan, Sri Radha Govinda Dev, and Sri Radha Gopinathji. These three deities are the life and soul of the Bengali Vaishnavas or Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who have a natural aptitude for residing in Vrindavan. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who follow strictly in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, worship the divinity by chanting the transcendental sounds meant to develop a sense of one's transcendental relationship with the Supreme Lord, a reciprocation of mellows, rasa, of mutual affection, and ultimately the achievement of the desired success in loving service. These three deities are worshipped in different stages of one's development. The followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sumptuously follow these principles of approach. Gaudiya Vaishnavas perceive the ultimate objective in Vedic hymns composed of 16 transcendental letters that adore Krishna as Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopijana Vallabha. Madan Mohan is he who charms Cupid, the god of love. Govinda is he who pleases the senses and the cows, and Gopijana Vallabha is the transcendental lover of the gopis. Krishna himself is called Madan Mohan, Govinda, Gopijana Vallabha, and countless other names as he plays in his different pastimes of his devotees. The three deities, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopijana Vallabha, have very specific qualities. Worship of Madan Mohan is on the platform of re establishing one's forgotten relationship with the personality of Godhead. In the material world, we are presently in utter ignorance of our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. Pango refers to one who cannot move independently by his own strength, and Mandamate is one who is less intelligent because of because he is too absorbed in materialistic activities. It is best for such persons not to aspire for success in fruitive activities or mental speculation, but instead simply to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of life is simply to surrender to the Supreme. In the beginning of one's spiritual life, we must therefore worship Madan Mohan so that he may attract us and nullify our attachment for material sense gratification. This relationship with Madan Mohan is necessary for neophyte devotees. When one wishes to render service to the Lord with strong attachment, one worships Govinda on the platform of transcendental service. Govinda is the reservoir of all pleasures. When, by the grace of Krishna and the devotees, one reaches perfection in devotional service, he can appreciate Govinda, he can appreciate Krishna as Gopijana Vallabha, the pleasure deity of the damsels of Raja. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained this mode of devotional service in three stages, and therefore these worshipable deities were installed in Vrindavan by different Goswamis. They are very dear to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas there, who visit the temple at least once a day. Besides the temple of these three deities, many other temples have been established in Vrindavan, such as the temple of Radha Damodar of Jiva Goswami, the temple of Sham Sundar of Shyamananda Goswami, the temple of Gokulananda of Lokanath Goswami, and the temple of Radha Raman of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. There are seven principal temples over 400 years old that are the most important of the 5,000 temples now existing in Vrindavan. Gaudiya indicates the part of India between the southern side of the Himalayan mountains and the northern part of the Vindhya Hills, which are called Airavarta or the land of the Aryans. This portion of India is divided into five parts or provinces: Pancha Gauda Desha, Saraswata, Kashmir and Punjab, Kanya Uttar Pradesh, including the modern city of Lucknow, Madhya Gauda, Madhya Pradesh, Maithila, Bihar and part of Bengal, and Utkala, part of Bengal and the whole of Orissa. Bengal is sometimes called Gaudadesh partly because it forms a portion of Maithila and partly because the capital of the Hindu king Raja Lakshmana Sena was known as Gauda. This this old capital later came to be known as Gaudapura and gradually Mayapur. The devotees of Orissa are called Udiyas. The devotees of Bengal are called Gaudiyas, and the devotees of southern India are known as Davida devotees. As there are five provinces in Airavrata, so Dakshinatya, southern India, is also divided into five provinces, which are called Panchadravida. The four Vaishnava acharyas, who are the great authorities of the four Vaishnava disciplic successions, as well as the Sripad Shankaracharya of the Mayavada school, appeared in the Panchadravida provinces. Among the four Vaishnava acharyas, who are all accepted by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Sri Ramanujacharya appeared in the southern part of Andhra Pradesh at Baha, Mahabhutapura, Puri. Sri Madhvacharya appeared at Pajakam near Vamanagiri in the district of Mangalore. Sri Vishnu Swami appeared at Pandya and Sri Nimbarka appeared at Murugarapatna in the southern in extreme south. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the chain of disciplic succession from the Madhvacharya, but the Vaishnavas in his line do not accept the Tattvavadis, who also claim to belong to the Madhva Sampradaya. To distinguish themselves clearly from the Tattvavadi branch of the Madhva descents, and the Vaishnavas of Bengal prefer to call themselves Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Sri Madhvacharya is also known as Sri Gauda Purananda. Therefore, the name Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya is quite suitable for the disciplic succession of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, accepted initiation in the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Text 20. Translation. In the beginning of this narration, simply by remembering the spiritual master, the devotees of the Lord, and the personality of Godhead, I have invoked their benedictions. Text 21. Such remembrance destroys all difficulties and very easily enables one to fulfill his own desires. 22. The invocation involves three processes: defining the objective, offering benedictions, and offering obeisances. 23. The first two verses offer respectful obeisances, generally and specifically to the Lord, who is the object of worship. 24. In the third verse, I indicate the absolute truth, which is the ultimate substance. With such a description, one can visualize the Supreme Lord. 25. In the fourth verse, I have invoked the benediction of the Lord upon all the worlds, praying to Lord Chaitanya for his mercy upon all. 26. In that verse, I have also explained the external reason for Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, but in the fifth and sixth verses, I have explained the prime reason for his advent. 27. In these six verses, I have described the truth of Lord Chaitanya, whereas in the next five, I have described the glory of Lord Nityananda. 28. The next two verses describe the truth of Advaita Prabhu. Following verses describe the Panchatattva, the Lord, his plenary portion, his incarnation, his energies, and his devotees. 29. These 14 verses therefore offer auspicious invocations and describe the supreme truth. 30. I offer my obeisances unto all my Vaishnava readers as I begin to explain the intricacies of all these verses. 31. I request all my Vaishnava readers to read and hear with rapt attention the narration of Sri Krishna Chaitanya as inculcated in the revealed scriptures. Purport. Lord Chaitanya is the absolute truth, Krishna himself. He is substantiated by evidence from the authentic scriptural spiritual scriptures. Sometimes people accept a man as God on the basis of their whimsical sentiments and without reference to the revealed scriptures. But the author of Chaitanya Caritamrta proves all his statements by citing the Shastras. Therefore, he established that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 32. Krishna enjoys by manifesting himself as the spiritual masters, the devotees, the diverse energies, the incarnations, and the plenary portions. They are all six in one. I therefore worship the lotus feet of the six diversities of one truth by invoking their benedictions. 34. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Purport. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has composed this Sanskrit verse from the beginning of his book. Now he will explain it in detail. He offers his respectful obeisances to the six principles of the Absolute Truth. Gurun is plural in number because anyone who gives spiritual instructions based on the revealed scriptures is accepted as a spiritual master. Although others give help in showing the way to beginners, the Guru who first initiates one with the Mahamantra is to be known as the initiator, and the saints who give instructions for progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness are called instructing spiritual masters. The initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings. Their function is to guide the conditioned soul back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted Nityananda Prabhu and the six Goswamis in the category of Guru. Isha Bhaktan refers to the devotees of the Lord like Sri Srivas and all other such followers who are the energy of the Lord and are qualitatively non different from him. Ishvattarakaran refers to acharyas like Advaita Prabhu, who is an avatar of the Lord. Tat Prakashan indicates the direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nityananda Prabhu and the initiating spiritual master. Tat Shakti refers to the spiritual energies, Shaktis of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar, Damodar, and Jagadananda belong to this category of internal energy. The six principles are differently manifested but all equally worshipable. Krishnadas Kaviraj begins by offering his obeisances unto them to teach us the method of worshipping Lord Chaitanya. The external potency of Godhead, called Maya, can never associate with the Lord. Just as darkness cannot remain in the presence of light, yet darkness being but an illusory or temporary covering of light has no existence independent of light. Would you like to read? You can sit here. From 35. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Text 35. I first offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami in his thesis Bhakti Sandarbha has stated that uncontaminated devotional service is the objective of pure Vaishnavas and that one has to execute such service in the association of other devotees. By associating with devotees of Lord Krishna, one develops a sense of Krishna consciousness and thus becomes inclined toward the loving service of the Lord. This is the process of approaching the Supreme Lord by gradual appreciation in devotional service. If one decides unalloyed devotional service, one must associate with devotees of Sri Krishna. For by such association only can a conditioned soul achieve a taste for transcendental love and thus revive his eternal relationship with Godhead in a specific manifestation and in terms of the specific transcendental mellow that one has eternally inherent in him. If one develops love for Krishna by Krishna conscious activities, one can know the supreme absolute truth. But he who tries to understand God simply by logical arguments will not succeed. nor will he get a taste for unalloyed devotion. The secret is that one must submissively listen to those who know perfectly the signs of God, and one must begin the mode of service regulated by the preceptor. A devotee already attracted by the name, form, qualities, etc. of the Supreme Lord may be directed to his specific manner of devotional service. He need not waste time in approaching the Lord through logic. The expert spiritual master knows well how to engage his disciples' energy in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and thus he engages the devotee in a specific devotional service according to his special tendency. A devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures acceptance of one of more than one is always forbidden. There is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. One should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress toward spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder. For such a ship can never reach its destination. It is imperative, therefore, that one accept a spiritual master if he at all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there is no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. There is no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. If one thinks that he is above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the shastric injunctions. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of hereditary or customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. One should simply try to find a genuinely qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. Text 36. My instructing spiritual masters are Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Bhatta Raghunatha, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, and Srila Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. Text 37. These six are my instructing spiritual masters, and therefore I offer millions of respectful obeisances unto their lotus feet. Purport. By accepting the six Goswamis as his instructing spiritual masters, the author specifically makes it clear that one should not be recognized as a Gaudiya Vaishnava if he is not obedient to them. Text 38. There are innumerable devotees of the Lord, of whom Srivas Thakura is the foremost. I offer my respectful obeisances thousands of times unto their lotus feet. Text 39. Advaita Acharya is the Lord's partial incarnation, and therefore I offer my obeisances millions of times at his lotus feet. Text 40. Srila Nityananda Rama is the plenary manifestation of the Lord, and I have been initiated by him. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Text 41. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the internal potencies of the Lord, of whom Sri Gadadhara Prabhu is the foremost. Text 42. Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the personality of Godhead himself, and therefore I offer innumerable prostrations at his lotus feet. Text 43. Having offered obeisances unto the Lord and all his associates, I shall now try to explain these six diversities in one. Purport. There are many unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of whom are considered associates surrounding the Lord. Krishna should be worshipped with his devotees. That the diverse principles are therefore the eternal paraphernalia through which the absolute truth can be approached. Text 44. Although I know that my spiritual master is the servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. But every living entity is essentially a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the spiritual master is also his servant. Still, the spiritual master is a direct manifestation of the Lord. With this conviction, a disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master is non different from Krishna because he is a manifestation of Krishna. Lord Nityananda, who is Balarama himself, the first direct manifestation or expansion of Krishna, is the original spiritual master. He helps Lord Krishna in his pastimes and he is a servant of the Lord. Every living entity is eternally a servant of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Therefore, the spiritual master cannot be other than a servant of Lord Chaitanya. The spiritual master's eternal occupation is to expand the service of the Lord by training disciples in a service attitude. A spiritual master never poses as a supreme Lord himself. He is considered a representative of the Lord. The revealed scriptures prohibit one pretending to be God, but a bona fide spiritual master is a most faithful and confidential servant of the Lord and therefore deserves as much respect as Krishna. Text 45. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. Purport. The relationship of a disciple with his spiritual master is as good as his relationship with the Supreme Lord. A spiritual master always represents himself as the humblest servitor of the personality of Godhead, but the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of Godhead. Text 46. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is a representative of all the demigods. Purport. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11.17.27, spoken by Lord Krishna when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the four social and spiritual orders of society. The Lord was specifically instructing how a brahmachari should behave under the care of a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of facilities offered by his disciples. He is like a parent. Without the attentive service of his parents, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called Acharya or a transcendental professor of spiritual science. The Manu Samhita explains the duties of an Acharya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teaches them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called Upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread on the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate a disciple with the sacred thread ceremony, and after this samskara or purificatory process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Sudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master, who is duly authorized to award a disciple the right to be a Brahmana if he finds him perfectly qualified. In the Vayu Purana, an Acharya is defined as one who knows the import of all the Vedic literatures, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as a spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an Acharya, there are no activities but those of transcendental loving service to the Lord. He is the supreme personality of Sarvator Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a sturdy devotee who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one poses himself as an Acharya but does not have an attitude of servitorship of the Lord, he must be considered an offender, and this offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an Acharya. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord and a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known as Acharya Deva, influenced by by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification. Mundanas criticize a real Acharya. In fact, however, a bona fide Acharya is non different from the personality of Godhead, and therefore to envy such an Acharya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subversive of transcendental realization. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Sri Krishna, but at the same time, one should always remember that a spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Sri Krishna in every respect to exploit the sentiments of their disciples, but such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of the devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is Achintya Beda Tattva, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with and different from the personality of Godhead. Srila Raghunatha Dasa Goswami confirms that this is a real position of a bona fide spiritual master and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda, that is Sri Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbham has clearly explained that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as being one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunath Dasa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later acharyas like Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakuram have confirmed the same truths. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura confirms that all the revealed scriptures accept the spiritual master to be identical with the personality of Godhead because he is a very dear and confidential servant of the Lord. Gaudiya Vaishnavas therefore worship Srila Gurudeva, the spiritual master, in the light of his being the servant of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottama Das Thakuram, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and all other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Text 47. One should know the instructing spiritual master to be the personality of Krishna. Lord Krishna manifests himself as a supersoul and as the greatest devotee of the Lord. Purport. Srila Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami states that the instructing spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna himself teaches us as the instructing spiritual master from within and without. From within, he teaches as Paramatma, our constant companion, and from without, he teaches from the Bhagavad Gita as the instructing spiritual master. There are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters. One is a liberated person fully absorbed in meditation in devotional service, and the other is he who invokes a disciple's spiritual consciousness by means of relevant instructions. Thus, the instructions in the science of devotion are differentiated in terms of the objective and subjective ways of understanding. The Acharya, in the true sense of the term, who is authorized to deliver Krishna, enriches the disciple with full spiritual knowledge, and thus awakens him to the activities of devotional service. When, by learning from the self realized spiritual master, one actually engages himself in the service of Lord Vishnu, functional devotional service begins. The procedures of his devotional service are known as abhideya or actions one is duty bound to perform. Our only shelter is the Supreme Lord, and one who teaches how to approach Krishna is the functioning form of the personality of Godhead. There is no difference between the shelter giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits an offense in the discharge of devotional service. Srila Sanatana Goswami is the ideal spiritual master, for he delivers one the shelter of the lotus feet of Madan Mohana. Even though one may be unable to travel on the field of Vrindavana due to forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can get an adequate opportunity to stay in Vrindavana and derive all spiritual benefits by the mercy of Sanatana Goswami. Sri Govindaji acts exactly like the Siksha Guru, instructing spiritual master by teaching Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita. He is the original preceptor, for he gives us instructions and an opportunity to serve him. The initiating spiritual master is a personal manifestation of Srila Madan Mohana Vigraha, whereas the instructing spiritual master is a personal representative of Srila Govinda Deva Vigraha. Both of these deities are worshipped at Vrindavana. Srila Gopinath is the ultimate attraction in spiritual realization. Text 48. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts. Text 48. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma. For you appear in two futures, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. Purport. These words from Srimad Bhagavatam were spoken by Srila Uddhava after he heard from Sri Krishna all necessary instructions about yoga. Text 49. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Purport. This verse of the Bhagavad Gita clearly states how Govindadeva instructs his bona fide devotee. The Lord declares that by enlightenment in theistic knowledge, he awards attachment for him to those who constantly engage in his transcendental loving service. This awakening of divine consciousness enthralls a devotee who thus relishes his eternal transcendental mellow. Such an awakening is awarded only to those convinced by devotional service about the transcendental nature of the personality of Godhead. They know that the supreme truth, all spiritual and all powerful person, is one without a second and has fully transcendental senses. He is the fountainhead of all emanations. Such pure devotees, always merged in knowledge of Krishna and absorbed in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations as great scientists exchange their views and discuss the results of their research in scientific academies. Such exchanges of thoughts in regard to Krishna give pleasure to the Lord, who therefore favors such devotees with all enlightenment. Text 50. The Supreme Personality of Godhead taught Brahma and made himself realized. Purport. The English maxim that God helps those who help themselves is also applicable in the transcendental realm. There are many instances in the revealed scriptures of the personality of Godhead acting as a spiritual master from within. The personality of Godhead was the spiritual master who instructed Brahma, the original living being in the cosmic creation. When Brahma was first created, he could not apply his creative energy to arrange the cosmic situation. At first, there was only sound vibrating the word tapa, which indicates the acceptance of hardships for spiritual realization. Refraining from sensual enjoyment, one should voluntarily accept all sorts of difficulties for spiritual realization. This is called tapasya. or an enjoyer of the senses can never realize God, godliness, or the science of theistic knowledge. Thus, when Brahma, initiated by Sri Krishna by the sound vibration tapa, engaged himself in acts of austerity, by the pleasure of Vishnu, he was able to visualize the transcendental world. Sri Vaikunta through transcendental realization. Modern science can communicate using material discoveries such as radio, television, and computers, but the science invoked by the austerities of Sri Brahma, the original father of mankind, was still more subtle. In time, material scientists may also know how we can communicate with the Vaikunta world. Lord Brahma inquired about the potency of the Supreme Lord, and the personality of Godhead answered his inquiry in the following six consecutive statements. These instructions, which are reproduced from Srimad Bhagavatam, were imparted by the personality of Godhead, acting as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Text 51. Please hear attentively what I shall speak to you, for transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific but also full of mysteries. Purport. Transcendental knowledge of Sri Krishna is deeper than the impersonal knowledge of Brahman, for it includes knowledge of not only his form and personality but also everything else related to him. There is nothing in existence not related to Sri Krishna. In a sense, there is nothing but Sri Krishna, and yet nothing is Sri Krishna save and except his primeval personality. This knowledge constitutes a complete transcendental science, and Vishnu wanted to give Brahmaji full knowledge about that science. The mystery of this knowledge culminates in personal attachment to the Lord, with a resulting effect of detachment from anything non Krishna. There are nine alternative transcendental means of attaining this stage: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping, praying, assisting, fraternizing with the Lord, and sacrificing everything for Him. There are different parts of the same devotional service which is full of transcendental mystery. The Lord said to Brahma that since he was pleased with him by his grace, the mystery was being revealed. Text 52. By my causeless mercy, be enlightened in truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and past tense. Purport. The transcendental personal forms of the Lord are a mystery, and the symptoms of these forms, which are absolutely different from anything made of mundane elements, are also mysterious. The innumerable forms of the Lord, such as Shyamasundara, Narayana, Rama, and Gaurasundara, the colors of these forms white, red, yellow, cloud like Shama, and others, his qualities as a responsive personality of Godhead to pure devotees and as impersonal Brahman to dry speculators, his uncommon activities like lifting Govardhana hill, marrying more than 16,000 queens at Dwaraka, and entering the Rasa dance with the damsels of Raja, expanding himself in as many forms as there were damsels in the dance. These and innumerable other uncommon acts and attributes are all mysteries, one aspect of which is presented in the scientific knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, which is read and adored all over the world by all classes of scholars. With as many interpretations as there are empiric philosophers, the truth of these mysteries was revealed to Brahma by the descending process without the help of the ascending one. The Lord's mercy descends to a devotee like Brahma, and through Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and from Vyasadeva to Sukadeva, and so on in the bona fide chain of this disciplic succession. We cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors, they are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. In other words, impersonalists who depend upon the strength of their poor fund of knowledge and morbid speculative habits without submission and service in the forms of hearing, chanting, and the others mentioned above, cannot penetrate to the mysterious region of the transcends, where the supreme truth is a transcendental person, free from all things of the material elements. Discovering the mystery of the Lord eliminates the impersonal future realized by common spiritualists who are merely trying to enter the spiritual region from the mundane platform. Text 53. Prior to the cosmic creation, only I exist and no phenomena exist, either gross, subtle, or primordial. After creation, only I exist in everything, and after annihilation, only I remain eternally. Purport. Aham means I. Therefore, the speaker who is saying Aham, I must have his own personality. The Mayavadi philosophers interpret this word Aham as referring to the impersonal Brahman. The Mayavadis are very proud of their grammatical knowledge, but any person who has actual knowledge of grammar can understand that aham means I, and that I refers to a personality. Therefore, the personality of Godhead speaking to Brahma uses aham while describing his own transcendental form. Aham has a specific meaning. It is not a vague term that can be whimsically interpreted. Aham, when spoken by Krishna, refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and nothing else. Before the creation and after its dissolution, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates exist. There is no existence of the material elements. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. Vasudeva va idam agram asinna brahma nacha sankara. The meaning of this mantra is that before creation there was no existence of Brahma or Shiva, for only Vishnu existed. Vishnu exists in his abode, the Vaikunthas. There are innumerable Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and on each of them, Vishnu resides with his associates and his paraphernalia. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that although the creation is periodically dissolved, there is another abode which is never dissolved. The word creation refers to the material creation because in the spiritual world everything exists eternally and there is no creation or dissolution. The Lord indicates herein that before the material creation, He existed in fullness with all transcendental opulences, including all strength, all wealth, all beauty, all knowledge, all fame, and all renunciation. If one thinks of a king, he automatically thinks of his secretaries, ministries, ministers, military commanders, palaces, and so on. Such a king has since a king has such opulences, one can simply try to imagine the opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Lord says Aham, therefore, it is to be understood that He exists with full potency, including all opulences. The word Yat refers to Brahman, the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam. The Brahman effulgence expands unlimitedly, just as the sun is a localized planet with the sunshine expanding unlimitedly from that source. So, the Absolute Truth is a Supreme Personality of Godhead with this effulgence of energy, Brahman expanding unlimitedly. From that Brahman energy, the creation appears just as a cloud appears in sunshine. From the cloud comes rain, from the rain comes vegetation, and from the vegetation come fruits and flowers, which are the basis of subsistence for many other forms of life. Similarly, the effulgent bodily luster of the Supreme Lord is the cause of the creation of infinite universes. The Brahman effulgence is impersonal, but the cause of that energy is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From him, in his abode, the Vaikunthas, this Brahma Jyoti emanates. He is never impersonal. Since impersonalists cannot understand the source of the Brahman energy, they mistakenly choose to think this impersonal Brahman the ultimate or absolute goal. But as stated in the Upanishads, one has to penetrate the impersonal effulgence to see the face of the Supreme Lord. If one desires to reach the source of the sunshine, he has to travel through the sunshine to reach the sun and then meet the predominating deity there. The absolute truth is the Supreme Person, Bhagavan, as Srimad Bhagavatam explains. Sat means effect, Asat means cause. And Param refers to the ultimate truth, which is transcendental to cause and effect. The cause of the creation is called the Mahat Tattva or total material energy, and its effect is the creation itself. But neither cause nor effect existed in the beginning. They emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as did the energy of time. This is stated in the Vedanta Sutra. The source of birth of the cosmic manifestation or Mahat Tattva is the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed throughout Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the fountainhead of all emanations. The material cosmos, being temporary, is sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest, but its energy emanates from the Supreme Absolute Lord. Before the creation, there was neither cause nor effect, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed with his full opulence and energy. The words Paschat Aham indicates that the Lord exists after the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. When the material world is dissolved, the Lord still exists personally in the Vaikunthas. During the creation, the Lord also exists as he is in the Vaikunthas, and he also exists as a super soul within the material universes. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Goloka eva nivasati. Although he is perfectly and eternally present in Goloka Vrindavan in Vaikuntha, he is nevertheless all pervading. The all pervading feature of the Lord is called the Super Soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Aham Krishnasya Jagatah Prabhava, the cosmic manifestation is a display of the energy of the Supreme Lord. The material elements earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego display the inferior energy of the Lord, and the living entities are his superior energy. Since the energy of the Lord is not different from him, in fact, everything that exists in Krishna is his impersonal future. Sunshine, sunlight, and heat are not different from the sun, and yet simultaneously they are distinct energies of the sun. Similarly, the cosmic manifestation and the living entities are energies of the Lord, and they are considered to be simultaneously one with and different from him. The Lord therefore says, I am everything, because everything is his energy and is therefore non different from him. Iyo vasisyeta. So, Smayaham indicates that the Lord is the balance that exists after the dissolution of the creation. The spiritual manifestation never vanishes. It belongs to the internal energy of the Supreme Lord and exists eternally. When that external manifestation is withdrawn, the spiritual activities in Goloka and the rest of the Vaikunthas continue, unrestricted by material time, which has no existence in the spiritual world. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Yadgatva na nivartante taddhama paramam mama. The abode from which no one returns to this material world is the Supreme Personality of the Lord. Text 54. What appears to be truth without me is certainly my illusory energy. For nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of a real light in the shadows. For in the light there are neither shadows nor reflections. Purport. In the previous words, the absolute truth and its nature have been explained. One must also understand the relative truth to actually know the absolute. The relative truth, which is called Maya or material nature, is explained here. Maya has no independent existence. One who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti Suyatesa Characharam. The material nature is working and producing moving and non moving beings only by the supervision of Krishna. The real nature of Maya, the illusory existence of the material manifestation, is clearly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is substance, and the relative truth depends upon its relationship with the absolute for its existence. Maya means energy, therefore, the relative truth is explained to be the energy of the absolute truth. Since it is difficult to understand the distinction between the absolute and relative truths, an analogy can be given for clarification. The absolute truth can be compared to the sun, which is appreciated in terms of two relative truths, reflection and darkness. Darkness is the absence of sunshine, and reflection is a projection of sunlight into darkness. Neither darkness nor reflection has an independent existence. Darkness comes when the sunshine is blocked. For example, if one stands facing the sun, his back will be in darkness. Since darkness stands in the absence of the sun, it is therefore related to the sun. The spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine, and the material world is compared to the dark regions where the sun is not visible. When the material manifestation appears very wonderful, this is due to a perverted reflection of the supreme sunshine, the absolute truth, as confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Whatever one can see here has its substance in the absolute. As darkness is situated far away from the sun, so the material world is also far away from the spiritual world. The Vedic literature directs us not to be captivated by the dark regions, but to try to reach the shining regions of the absolute. The spiritual world is brightly illuminated, but the material world is wrapped in darkness. In the material world, sunshine, moonshine, or different kinds of artificial light are required to dispel darkness, especially at night. For by nature, the material world is dark. Therefore, the Supreme Lord has arranged for sunshine and moonshine. But in his abode, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, there is no necessity for lighting by sunshine, moonshine, or electricity because everything is self effulgent. That which is relative, temporary, and far away from the absolute truth is called Maya or ignorance. This illusion is exhibited in two ways, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita. The inferior illusion is inert matter, and the superior illusion is the living entity. The living entities are called illusory in this context only because they are implicated in the illusory structures and activities of the material world. Actually, the living entities are not illusory, for they are parts of the superior energy of the Supreme Lord and do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be so. The actions of the living entities in the spiritual kingdom are not illusory, they are the actual eternal activities of liberated souls.
Text 55. As the material elements enter the bodies of the living entities, living beings, and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creations, and yet am not within them. The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combine with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world. And yet they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in varied proportions. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Without his presence within the material world, the cosmic body could not develop, just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma or the Super Soul. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is his all pervading feature of Paramatma, enters every entity, from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness, and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person, as a man meets another man face to face. Because his development to transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, the surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple Sri Radha and Krishna sitting on the decorated throne beneath the desired tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavan. His nose is engaged in smelling the spiritual aromas of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing messages from Vaikuntha, and his hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his associates. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of the devotional relationship, in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. To achieve this love, one should be to achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being. 56. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about to know the all pervading truth. Purport: those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who, by pious activities, reaches the plane of heaven or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman. And this Brahmananda, the spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahman, is like the water in the hoof print of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. When one develops pure love of Godhead, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection. One should try to purchase the ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, which is not easily awakened, even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives. All mundane relationships are sure to be broken in course of time. But once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken even after the annihilation of the material world. One should understand through the transparent medium of the spiritual master that the spiritual Lord exists everywhere in his transcendental spiritual nature, and that the living entity's relationship with the Lord are directly and indirectly existing everywhere, even in this material world. In the spiritual world, there are five kinds of relationships with the Supreme Lord: Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The perverted reflections of these rasas are found in the material world. Land, home, furniture, and other inert material objects are related in Shanta or neutral and silent sense, whereas the servant works in Dasya relationship. The relationship between friends is called Sakhya, and affection of a parent for a child is known as Vatsalya. The affairs of conjugal love constitute Madhurya. These five relationships in the material world are distorted reflections of the original pure sentiments, which should be understood and perfected in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. In the material world, the perverted rasas bring frustration. If these rasas are established with Lord Krishna, the result is eternal blissful life. From this and the preceding three verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrta, which have been selected from Srimad Bhagavatam, the missionary activities of Lord Chaitanya can be understood. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, which are summarized in the four verses beginning with Aham Evaswam Evagre and concluding with Yat Syat Sarvatra Sarvada. In the first of these verses, 53, the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. The second verse further explains that the Lord is detached from the workings of the material energy Maya. The living entity, although parts and parcels of Lord Krishna, are prone to be controlled by the external energy. Therefore, although they are spiritual, in the material world they are encased in bodies of material energy. The eternal relationship of the living entities with the Supreme Lord is explained in that verse. The next verse instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material energy. This knowledge is called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to the Supreme Lord Krishna, he can then develop natural transcendental love for him. The surrendering process should be the primary concern of a living being. In the next verse, it is said that a conditioned soul must ultimately approach a bona fide spiritual master and try to understand perfectly the material and spiritual worlds and his own existential position. Here, the words Ananya Vyatire Khabhyam directly and indirectly suggest that one must learn the process of devotional service in two aspects. One must directly execute the process of devotional service and indirectly avoid the impediments to progress. Text 57. All glories to Chintamani and my initiating spiritual master Somagiri. All glories to my instructing spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who wears peacock feathers in his crown. Under the shade of his lotus feet, which are like desire trees, Jai Shri Radharani enjoys the transcendental mellow of an eternal concert. Purport. This verse is from Krishna Karnamrita, which is written by a great Vaishnava sannyasi named Bilvamangal Thakur, who is known as Lila Sukha. He intensely desires to enter into the eternal pastimes of the Lord, and he lived at Vrindavan for 700 years in the vicinity of Brahmakund, a still existing bathing tank in Vrindavan. The history of Bilvamangal Thakur is given in a book called Sri Vallabha Digvijaya. He appeared in the 8th century of the Sakha era in the province of Dravida and was the chief disciple of Vishnu Swami. In a list of templates and monasteries kept in Sankaracharya's monastery in Dwarka, Bilvamangal is mentioned as the founder of the Dwarkadisha temple there. He entrusted the service of his deity to Hari Brahmachari, a disciple of Vallabha Bhatta. Bilvamangal Thakur actually entered into the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. He has recorded his transcendental experiences and appreciation in the book known as Krishna Karnamrita. In the beginning of the book, he has offered his obeisances to his different gurus, and it is to be noted that he has adorned them all equally. The first spiritual master mentioned is Chintamani, who was one of his initiating spiritual masters, because she first showed him the spiritual path. Chintamani was a prostitute with whom Bilvamangal was intimate earlier in his life. She gave him the inspiration to begin on the path of devotional service. And because she convinced him to give up material existence to try for perfection by loving Krishna, he has offered his respects to her. Next, he offers his respects to his initiating spiritual master Somagiri, and then to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was also his instructing spiritual master. He explicitly mentions Bhagavan, who has peacock feathers on his crown, because the Lord of Vrindavan, Krishna, the cowherd boy, used to come to Bilvamangal to talk to him and supply him with milk. In his adoration of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, he states that Jayashri, the goddess of fortune, Srimati Radharani, takes shelter in the shade of his lotus feet to enjoy the transcendental rasa of nuptial love. The complete treatise, Krishna Karnamrita, is dedicated to the transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. It is a book to be read and understood by the most elevated devotees of Sri Krishna. 58. Since one cannot visually experience the presence of the Super Soul, he appears before us as a liberated devotee. Such a spiritual master is none other than Krishna himself. Purport: it is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant potency for serving the Supreme Lord. The preceptor appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, and at the same time, the devotee is guided from within by Chaita Guru, Krishna, who is seated as the spiritual master within the heart of the living entity. 58. One should therefore avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. With their realized instructions, such saints can cut the knot connecting one with the activities unfavorable to devotional service. Purport: this verse, which appears in Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava in a text known as the Uddhava Gita. The discussion relates to the story of Pururava, the heavenly courtesan Urvasi. When Urvasi left Pururava, he was deeply affected by the separation and had to learn to overcome his grief. It is indicated that to learn this transcendental science, it is imperative that one avoid the company of undesirable persons and always seek the company of saints and sages who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge. The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated through the years of undesirable association. For a neophyte devotee, there are two kinds of persons whose association is undesirable: gross materialists who constantly engage in sense gratification, and unbelievers who do not serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead but serve their senses and their mental whims in terms of their speculative habits. Intelligent persons seeking transcendental realizations should very scrupulously avoid their company. 60. The spiritually powerful message of Godhead can be properly discussed only in a society of devotees, and it is greatly pleasing to hear in that association. If one hears from devotees, the way of transcendental experience quickly opens, and gradually one attains firm faith that in due course develops into attraction and devotion. Purport: this verse appears in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Kalp- Kapiladev replies to the question of his mother, Devahuti, about the process of devotional service. As one advances in devotional activities, the process becomes progressively more clearer and more encouraging. Unless one gets this spiritual encouragement by following the instructions of the spiritual master, it is not possible to make advancement. Therefore, one's development of a taste for executing these instructions is a test of one's devotional service. Initially, one must develop confidence by hearing the signs of devotion from a qualified spiritual master. Then, as he associates with devotees, he tries to adapt the means instructed by the spiritual master in his own life. His misgivings and other obstacles are vanquished by his execution of devotional service. Strong attachment for transcendental service of the Lord develops as he continues listening to the messages of Godhead. And if he steadfastly proceeds in this way, he is certainly elevated to the spontaneous love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 61. A pure devotee constantly engaged in the loving service of the Lord is identical with the Lord, who is always seated in his heart. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one without a second, and therefore he is all powerful. He has inconceivable energies, of which three are principal. The devotee is considered to be one of these energies, never the energetic. The energetic is always the Supreme Lord. The energies are related to Him for the purpose of eternal service. A living entity in the conditioned stage can uncover his aptitude for serving the absolute truth by the grace of Krishna and his spiritual master. Then the Lord reveals Himself within his heart, and he can know that Krishna is seated in the heart of every pure devotee. Krishna is actually situated in the heart of every living entity, but only a devotee can realize this fact. 62. Saints are are my heart, and only I am in their hearts. They do not know anyone but me, and therefore I do not recognize anyone besides them as mine. Purport. This verse appears in Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.68 in connection with the misunderstanding between Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish. As a result of this misunderstanding, Durvasa Muni tried to kill the king. When the Sudarshan Chakra, the celebrated weapon of Godhead, appeared on the scene for the devoted king's protection, when the Sudarshan Chakra attacked Durvasa Muni, he fled in fear of the weapon and sought shelter from all the great demigods in heaven. Not one of them was able to protect him, and therefore Durvasa Muni prayed to Lord Vishnu for forgiveness. Lord Vishnu advised him, however, that if he wanted forgiveness, he had to get it from Maharaj Ambarish, not from him. In this context, Lord Vishnu spoke this verse. The Lord, being full and free from problems, can wholeheartedly care for his devotees. His concern is to elevate and protect all those who have taken shelter at his feet. The same responsibility is also entrusted to the spiritual master. The bona fide spiritual master's concern is how the devotees who have surrendered to him as a representative of the Lord can make progress in devotional service. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always mindful of the devotees who fully engage in cultivating knowledge of Him, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. 63. Saints of your caliber are themselves places of pilgrimage. Because of their purity, they are constant companions of the Lord, and therefore they can purify even the places of pilgrimage. This verse was spoken by Maharaj Yudhishthir to Vidura in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.10. Maharaj Yudhishthir was receiving his saintly uncle Vidura, who had been visiting sacred places of pilgrimage. Maharaj Yudhishthir told Vidura that pure devotees like him are personified holy places because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always within them in their hearts. By their association, sinful persons are freed from sinful reactions, and therefore, whenever a pure devotee goes to a sacred place of pilgrimage, the importance of holy places is due to the presence of such pure devotees. 64. Such pure devotees are of two types: personal associates, parishat, and neophyte devotees, sadhakas. Purport. Perfect servitors of the Lord are considered his personal associates, whereas the devotees endeavoring to attain perfection are called neophytes. Among the associates, some are attracted by the opulences of of the personality of Godhead, and others are attracted by the nuptial love of Godhead. The former devotees are placed in the realm of Vaikuntha to render reverential devotional service, whereas the latter devotees are placed in Vrindavan for the direct service of Sri Krishna. Text 65, 66. There are three categories of incarnations of Godhead: partial incarnations, qualitative incarnations, and empowered incarnations. The Purushas and Matsyas are examples of partial incarnations. Text 67, translation. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are qualitative incarnations. Empowered incarnations are those like the Kumaras, King Prithu, and Mahamuni Vyasa, the compiler of the Vedas. Translation. The personality of Godhead exhibit himself in two kinds of forms: Prakasha and Vilasa. The Supreme Lord expands his personal forms in two primary categories. The Prakasha forms are manifested by Lord Krishna for his pastimes, and their features are exactly like his. When Lord Krishna married 16,000 queens in Dwaraka, he did so in 16,000 Prakasha expansions. Similarly, during the Rasa dance, he expanded himself in identical Prakasha forms to dance besides each and every gopi simultaneously. When the Lord manifests his Vilasa expansions, however, they are somewhat different in their bodily features. Lord Balaram is the first Vilasa expansion of Lord Krishna, and the 400 Narayan forms in Vaikuntha expand from Balaram. There is no difference between the bodily forms of Shri Krishna and Balaram except that their bodily colors are different. Similarly, Sri Narayan in Vaikuntha has four hands, whereas Krishna has only two. The expansions of the Lord who manifest such bodily differences are known as Vilasa Vigrahas. 67, 70. Translation. When the personality of Godhead expands himself in many forms, all non different in their features, as Lord Krishna did when he married 16,000 queens and when he performed his rasa dance, such forms of the Lord are called manifested forms. Prakasha Vigraha. 67. It is astounding that Lord Krishna, who is one without a second, expands himself in 16,000 similar forms to marry 16,000 queens in their respective homes. Purport. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.69.2. 72. When Lord Krishna, surrounded by groups of cowherd girls, began the festivities of the Rasa dance, the Lord of all mystic powers placed himself between each two girls. Purport. This verse is quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.33.3. Text 73-74. Translation. When the girls and Krishna thus joined together, each girl thought that Krishna was dearly embracing her alone. To behold this wonderful pastime of the Lord's, the denizens of heaven and their wives, all very eager to see the dance, flew in the sky in their hundreds of aeroplanes. They showered flowers and beat sweetly on drums. Purport. This is another quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 33.3-4. Text 75. Translation. If numerous forms, all equal in their features, are displayed simultaneously, such forms are called Prakasha Vigraha of the Lord. Purport. This is a quotation from Laghu Bhagavatamrta 1.21, compiled by Sri Rupa Goswami. 76. Translation. But when the numerous forms are slightly different from one another, they are called Vilasa Vigrahas. 77. When the Lord displays numerous forms with different features by his inconceivable potency, such forms are called Vilasa Vigrahas. Purport. This is another quotation from Laghu Bhagavatamrita 1.15. 78. Examples of such Vilasa Vigrahas are Baladev, Narayan in Vaikuntha Dhama, and the Chaturvyuha, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Text 79 and 80. Translation. These energies, consorts of the Supreme Lord, are of three kinds: the Lakshmis in Vaikuntha, the queens in Dwaraka, and the gopis in Vrindavan. The gopis are the best of all, for they have the privilege of serving Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord, the son of the king of Raja. Text 81. Translation. The personal associates of the primeval Lord Sri Krishna and his devotees who are identical with him. He is complete with his entourage of devotees. Purport. Sri Krishna and his various personal expansions are non different in potential power. These expansions are associated with further secondary expansions or servitor expansions who are called devotees. Text 82. Now I have worshipped all the various levels of devotees. Worshipping them is the source of all good fortune. Purport. To offer prayers to the Lord, who is first, we should first offer prayers to his devotees and associates. 83. In the first verse, I have invoked a great benediction, but in the second, I have prayed to the Lord in a particular form. 84. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. 85-86. Sri Krishna and Balaram, the personality of Godhead, who formerly appeared in Vrindavan and were millions of times more effulgent than the sun and the moon, have arisen over the eastern horizon of Gaudiya Desh, West Bengal, being compassionate for the fallen state of the world. 87. The appearance of Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Prabhu Nityananda has surcharged the world with happiness. 88 and 89. As the sun and moon drive away darkness by their appearance and reveal the nature of everything, these two brothers dissipate the darkness of ignorance covering the living beings and enlighten them with the knowledge of the absolute truth. 90. The darkness of ignorance is called Kaitava, the way of cheating, which begins with religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. 91. Translation. The great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, compiled by Mahamuni Vyasadeva from 4 original verses, describes the most elevated and kind hearted devotees and completely rejects the cheating ways of materially motivated religiosity. It propounds the highest principle of eternal religion, which can factually mitigate the threefold miseries of a living being and award the highest benediction of full prosperity and knowledge. Those willing to hear this message, the message of the scripture, in a submissive attitude of service, can at once capture the Supreme Lord in their hearts. Therefore, there is no need of any scripture other than Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport. This verse appears in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. The words Mahamuni Krite indicates that Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled by the great sage Vedavyas, who is known as Narayana Mahamuni because he is an incarnation of Narayana. Vyasadeva, therefore, is not an ordinary man, but is empowered by the personality of Godhead. He compiled the beautiful Bhagavatam to narrate some of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. In Srimad Bhagavatam, a distinction between real religion and pretentious religion has been clearly made. According to this original and genuine commentation on the Vedanta Sutra, there are numerous pretentious faiths that pass as religion but neglect the real essence of religion. The real religion of a living being is his natural inborn quality, whereas pretentious religion is a form of science that artificially covers a living entity's pure consciousness under certain unfavorable conditions. Real religion lies dormant, whereas real artificial religion dominates the mental plane. A living entity can awaken this dormant religion by hearing with a pure heart. The path of religion described by Srimad Bhagavatam is different from all forms of imperfect religiosity. Religion can be considered in the following 3 divisions: the path of fruitive work, the path of knowledge and mystic powers, and the path of worship and devotional service. The path of fruitive work, karma kanda, even when decorated by religious ceremonies meant to elevate one's material condition, is a cheating process because it can never enable one to gain relief from material existence and achieve the highest goal. A living entity perpetually struggles hard to rid himself of the pangs of material existence. But the path of fruitive work leads him to either temporary happiness or temporary distress in material existence. By pious fruitive work, one is placed in a position where he can temporarily feel material happiness, whereas vicious activities lead him to a distressful position of material want and scarcity. However, even if one is put into the most perfect situation of material happiness, he cannot in that way become free from the pangs of birth, death, old age, and disease. A materially happy person is therefore in need of eternal relief that mundane religiosity, in terms of fruitive work, can never award. The paths of culture of knowledge, jnana marg, and of mystic powers, yoga marg, are equally hazardous, for one does not know where one will go by following these uncertain methods. An empiric philosopher in search of spiritual knowledge may endeavor most laboriously for many, many births in mental speculation, but unless and until he reaches the stage of the purest quality of goodness, in other words, until he transcends the plane of material speculation, it is not possible for him to know that everything emanates from the personality of Godhead Vasudeva. His attachment to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord makes him unfit to rise to the transcendental stage of Vasudeva understanding. And therefore, because of his unclean state of mind, he glides down again into material existence, even after having ascended to the highest stage of liberation. This fall down takes place due to his want of a locus standi in the service of the Supreme Lord. As far as mystic powers of the yogis are concerned, they are also material entanglements on the path of spiritual realization. One German scholar who became a devotee of Godhead in India said that the material science has already made laudable progress in duplicating the mystic powers of the yogis. He therefore came to India not to learn the methods of yogis' mystic powers, but to learn the path of transcendental loving science, service to the Supreme Lord. As mentioned in the great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, mystic powers can make a yogi materially powerful and thus give temporary relief from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, as other material sciences can also do. But such mystic powers can never be a permanent source of relief from those miseries. Therefore, according to the Bhagavad school, this path of religiosity is also a method of cheating its followers. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly defined that the most elevated and powerful mystic yogi is one who can constantly think of the Supreme Lord within his heart and engage in the loving service of the Lord. The path of worship of the innumerable devas or administrative godheads is still more hazardous and uncertain than the above mentioned process of Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. The system of worshipping many gods such as Durga, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and the impersonal Vishnu form is accepted by persons who have been blinded by an intense desire for sense gratification. When properly executed in terms of the rites mentioned in the Shastras, which are now very difficult to perform in this age of want and scarcity, such worship can be certainly fulfill one's desires for sense gratification. Shri Shri Kishore Kishori ki jai. Such worship can certainly fulfill one's desires for sense gratification, but the success obtained by such methods is certainly transient, and it is suitable only for less intelligent person. This is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita. No sane man should be satisfied by such temporary benefits. None of the above mentioned three religious paths can deliver a person from the threefold miseries of material existence, namely, miseries caused by the body, mind, miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by the demigods. This process of religion, described in Srimad Bhagavatam, however, is able to give its followers permanent relief from the threefold miseries. The Bhagavatam describes the highest religious form, reinstatement of the living entity in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord, which is free from the infections of desires for sense gratification, fruitive work, and the culture of knowledge, with the aim of merging into the Absolute to become one with the Supreme Lord. Any process of religiosity based on sense gratification, gross or subtle, must be considered a pretentious religion because it is unable to give perpetual protection to its followers. The word projita is significant. Pra means complete. Ujjita means rejection, indicates rejection. Religiosity in the shape of fruitive work is directly a method of gross sense gratification, whereas the process of culturing spiritual knowledge with a view to becoming one with the Absolute is a method of subtle sense gratification. All such pretentious religiosity based on gross or subtle sense gratification is completely rejected in the process of Bhagavad Dharma, or the transcendental religion that is the eternal function of the living being. Bhagavad Dharma, or religious principle described in Srimad Bhagavatam, of which Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary study, is meant for liberated persons of the highest order, which attributes very little value to the sense gratification or pretentious religiosity. The first and foremost concern of fruitive workers, elevationists, empiric philosophers, and salvationists is to raise their material position. But devotees of Godhead have no such selfish desires. They serve the Supreme Lord only for his satisfaction. Sri Arjuna wanted to satisfy his senses by becoming a so called non violent and pious man. At first, decided not to fight. But when he was fully situated in the principles of Bhagavad Dharma, culminating in complete surrender unto the will of the Supreme Lord, he changed his decision and agreed to fight for the satisfaction of the Lord. He then said, "My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions." It is the constitutional position of the living entity to be situated in pure consciousness. Any so called religious process that interferes with this unadulterated spiritual position of the living being must therefore be considered a pretentious process of religiosity. The real form of religion is spontaneous, loving service to Godhead. This relationship of the living being with the absolute personality of Godhead in service is eternal. The personality of Godhead is described as Vastu or substance, and the living entities are described as Vastavas or the innumerable samples of the substance in relative existence. The relationship of these substantive portions with the supreme substance can never be annihilated, for it is an eternal quality inherited in the living being. By contact with material nature, the living entity exhibits varied symptoms of the disease of material consciousness. To cure this material disease is the supreme object of human life. The process that treats this disease is called Bhagavad Dharma or Sanatan Dharma, real religion. This is described in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, anyone who, because of his background of pious activities in previous lives, is anxious to hear Srimad Bhagavatam immediately, realizes the presence of the Supreme Lord within his heart and fulfills the mission of his life. 92. The foremost process of cheating is to desire to achieve liberation by merging into the Supreme Lord. For this cause, for this causes the permanent disappearance of loving service to Krishna. Purport: the desire to merge into the impersonal Brahman is the subtlest form of type of atheism. As soon as an atheism, as soon as such atheism disguised in the dress of liberation is encouraged, one becomes completely unable to traverse the path of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 93. The prefix pra in the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam indicates that the desire for liberation is completely rejected. Purport: this is an anointation by Sridhar Swami, the great commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. 94. All kinds of activities, both auspicious and inauspicious, that are detrimental to the discharge of transcendental loving service to Lord Shri Krishna are actions in the darkness of ignorance. Purport: the poetical comparison of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda to the sun and moon is very significant. The living entities are spiritual sparks, and their constitutional position is to render devotional service to the Supreme Lord in full Krishna consciousness. So called pious activities and other ritualistic performances, pious or impious, as well as the desire to escape from material existence, are all considered to be covering of these spiritual sparks. The living entities must get free from these superfluous coverings and fully engage in Krishna consciousness. The purpose of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda is to dispel the darkness of the soul. Before their appearance, all these superfluous activities of the living entities were covering Krishna consciousness. But after the appearance of these two brothers, people's hearts are becoming cleansed and they are again becoming situated in the real position of Krishna consciousness. 95. Translation. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, the darkness of ignorance is removed and the truth is brought to light. 96. The absolute truth is Sri Krishna, and devotional service to Sri Krishna exhibited in pure love is achieved through congregational chanting of the holy name, which is the essence of all bliss. 97. The sun and moon dissipate the darkness of the external world and thus reveal external material objects like pots and, and plates. 98. But these two brothers, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, dissipate the darkness of the inner core of the heart, and thus they help one to meet the two kinds of Bhagavatas, persons or things in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 99. One of the Bhagavatas is the great scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is the pure devotee absorbed in the mellows of loving devotion. 100. Though through the actions of these two Bhagavatas, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living entity. And thus the Lord in the heart of his devotee comes under the control of the devotee's love. 101. The first wonder is that both brothers appear simultaneously, and the other is that they illuminate the innermost depths of the heart. 102. These two, the sun and the moon, are very kind to the people of the world. Thus, for the good fortune of all, they have appeared on the horizon of Bengal. Purport. The celebrated ancient capital of the Sena dynasty, which was known as Gauda Desha or Gauda, was situated in what is now the modern district of Malada. Later, this capital was transferred to the ninth or central island on the western side of the Ganges at Navadvip, which is now known as Mayapur, and was then called Gaudapura. Lord Chaitanya appeared there, and Lord Nityananda came there and joined him from the district of Birbham. They appeared on the horizon of Gaudadesha to spread the signs of Krishna consciousness. And it is predicted that as the sun and moon gradually move west, the movement they began 500 years ago will come to the Western civilization by their mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu drive away five kinds of ignorance of the conditioned souls. In the Mahabharata, Udyaga Parva, 43rd chapter, these five kinds of ignorance are described. They are accepting the body as the self to be the self, 2. Making material sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment, 3. Become anxious due to material identification, 4. Lamentation, and 5. Thinking that there is anything beyond the absolute truth. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya eradicate these five kinds of ignorance. Whatever one sees or otherwise experiences, one should know to be simply an exhibition of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's energy. Everything is a manifestation of Krishna. Text 103. Let us therefore worship the holy feet of these two lords. Thus they can be rid of all difficulties on the path of self realization. Thus one can be rid of all difficulties on the path of self realization. 104. I have invoked the benediction of the Lords with these two verses, text 1 and 2 of this chapter. Now please hear attentively the purport of the third verse. 105. I purposely avoided extensive description for fear of increasing the bulk of this book. I shall describe the essence of as concisely as possible. 106. Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. 107. Simply hearing with one's free one's submissively will free one's heart from all the faults of ignorance, and thus one will achieve deep love of Krishna. This is the path of peace. 108 and 109. If one patiently hears about the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Advaita Prabhu and their devotees, devotional activities, names, and fame, along with the mellows of their transcendental loving exchanges, one will learn the essence of the absolute truth. Therefore, I have described these in the Chaitanya Charitamrta with logic and discrimination. Text 110. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Purport. Thus sent the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, first chapter describing the spiritual masters. Chapter 2. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chapter 2. This chapter explains that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna Himself. Therefore, the Brahman effulgence is the bodily luster of Lord Chaitanya, and the localized super soul situated in the heart of every living entity is his partial representation. The Purusha avatars are also explained in this connection. Mahavishnu is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. But as confirmed in the authoritative scriptures, Lord Krishna is the ultimate fountainhead, the source of numerous plenary expansions, including Narayana, who is generally accepted by Mayavad philosophers to be the absolute truth. The Lord's manifestation of Prabhava and Vaibhava expansions, as well as the partial incarnations and incarnations with delegated powers, are also explained. Lord Krishna's age of boyhood and youth are discussed, and it is explained that his age at the beginning of youth is his eternal form. This, the spiritual sky contains innumerable spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas, which are manifestations of the Supreme Lord's internal energy. Innumerable material universes are similarly exhibited by his external energy, and the living entities are manifested by his marginal energy. Because Lord Krishna Chaitanya is non different from Lord Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. There is no cause beyond him. He is eternal and his form is spiritual. Lord Chaitanya is directly the Supreme Lord Krishna, as the evidence of authoritative scriptures proves. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entities with him. Text 1. Translation. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose the mercy even whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean. By whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusions about the absolute truth, which is full of crocodiles of various theories. Purport. By the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even an inexperienced boy with no educational culture can be saved from the ocean of nescience, which is full of various types of philosophical doctrines that are like dangerous aquatic animals. the philosophy of the Buddha, the argumentative presentation of the Gyanis, the yoga systems of Patanjali and Gautama, the systems of philosophers like Kannada, Kapila, Dattatreya are dangerous creatures in the ocean of nescience. By the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can have real understanding of the essence of knowledge by avoiding these sectarian views and accepting the lotus feet of Krishna, the ultimate goal of life. Let us all worship Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for his gracious mercy to the conditioned souls. Text 2. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges water of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name, which are the pleasure abodes of unalloyed devotees. These devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. The rivers flowing produce a melodious sound that gladden their ears. Purport. Our tongues always engage in vibrating useless sounds that do not help us realize transcendental peace. The tongue is compared to a desert because a desert needs a constant supply of refreshing water to make it fertile and fruitful. Water is the substance most needed in the desert. The transient pleasure derived from the mundane topics of culture, art, politics, sociology, dry philosophy, poetry, and so on is compared to a mere drop of water because although such topics have a qualitative feature of transcendental pleasures, they are saturated with the modes of material nature. Therefore, neither collectively nor individually can they satisfy the vast requirements of the desert like tongue. Despite crying in various conferences, therefore, the desert like tongue continues to be parched. For this reason, people from all parts of the world must call for the devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are compared to swans swimming around the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or bees humming around his lotus feet in transcendental pleasures. Searching for honey, the dryness of material happiness cannot be moistened by so called philosophers who cry for Brahman, liberation, and similar dry speculative objects. This, the urge of the soul proper, is different. The soul can be solaced only by the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his many bona fide devotees who never leave the lotus feet of the Lord to become imitation Mahaprabhus, but by but all cling to his lotus feet like bees that never leave a honey-soaked lotus flowers. Lord Chaitanya's movement of Krishna consciousness is full of dances and singing about the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It is herein compared to to the pure water of the Ganges, which is full of lotus flowers. The enjoyers of these lotus flowers and the pure devotees, who are like bees and swans, they chant like the flowing of the Ganges, the river of the celestial kingdom. The author describes such sweetly flowing waves to cover his tongue. He humbly compares himself to materialistic persons who always engage in dry talk from which they derive no satisfaction. If they were to use their dry tongues to chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as exemplified by Lord Chaitanya, they would taste sweet nectar and enjoy life. Please come. Oh, you can bring your chair.
Lord Chaitanya's movement of Krishna consciousness is full of dancing and singing about the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It is compared herein to the pure waters of Ganges, which are full of lotus flowers. The enjoyers of those lotus flowers are the pure devotees who are like bees and swans. They chant like flowing of they chant like the flowing of the Ganges, the river of the celestial kingdom. The author desires such sweetly flowing waves to cover his tongue. He humbly compares himself to materialistic persons who always engage in dry talk from which they derive no satisfaction. If they were to use their dry tongues to chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As exemplified by Lord Chaitanya, they would taste sweet nectar and enjoy life. Text 3 translation. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Sri Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra, and all the glories to the devotees of Lord Gauranga. Let me describe the meaning of the verse uh, of the first 14. It is an auspicious vibration that describes the absolute truth. Text 5 translation. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord known as the Super Soul is but his socialized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with six opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. Purport. The compliers of Upanishads speak very highly of the impersonal Brahman. The Upanishads, which are considered the most elevated portion of the Vedic literature, are meant for persons who desire to get free from material association and who therefore approach a bona fide spiritual master for enlightenment. The prefix upa indicates that one must receive knowledge about the absolute truth from the spiritual master. One who has faith in his spiritual master actually receives transcendental instruction, and as his attachment for material life slackens, he is able to advance on the spiritual path. Knowledge of the transcendental science of the Upanishads can free one from the entanglement of existence in the material world, and when thus liberated, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by advancement in spiritual life. The beginning of spiritual enlightenment is a realization of impersonal Brahman. Such realization is affected by gradual negation of material variegatedness. Impersonal Brahman realization is a partial distant experience of the absolute truth that one achieves through the rational approach. It is compared to one seeing hill from a distance and taking it to be smoky cloud. A hill is not a smoky cloud, but it appears to be one from the distance because of our imperfect vision. In imperfect or smoky realization of the absolute truth, spiritual variegatedness is conspicuous by its absence. This experience is therefore called Advaita Vada, or realization of the oneness of the Absolute. The impersonal growing effulgence of Brahman consists only of the personal bodily rays of the Supreme Godhead. Shri Krishna, since, since Shri Gaurasundara, or Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is identical with Shri Krishna himself, the Brahman effulgence consists of the rays of his transcendental body. Similarly, the Supersoul, which is called Paramatma, is a plenary representation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Ataryami, the Supersoul in everyone's heart, is the controller of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Lord Krishna says, Sarvasya Cham Hirdi Sanivestha. I am situated in everyone's heart. The Bhagavad Gita also states, Bhaktaram Yaina Tapasam Sarvaloka Maneshwaram. indicating that the Supreme Lord, acting in his expansion as a super soul, is the proprietor of everything. Similarly, the Brahma Samrita states Adantara sta Paramanu Chayantara sta. The Lord is present everywhere within the heart of every living entity and within each and every atom as well. Thus, by this, the super soul featured the Lord as all pervading. Furthermore, Lord Chaitanya is also the master of all wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because he is Sri Krishna himself. He is described as Purna, or complete. In the feature of Lord Chaitanya, the Lord is an ideal renouncer, just as Sri Rama was an ideal king. Lord Chaitanya accepted the order of sannyasa and exemplified exceedingly wonderful principle of his own life in his own life. No one can compare to him in the order of sannyasa. Although in Kali Yuga acceptance of the sannyasa order is generally forbidden, Lord Chaitanya accepted it because he is complete in renunciation. Others cannot imitate him, but can only follow in his footsteps as far as possible. Those who are unfit for this order of life are strictly forbidden by the injunctions of the Shastras to accept it. Lord Chaitanya, however, is complete in renunciation as well as other opulences. He is therefore the highest principle of the absolute truth. By an analytical study of the truth of Lord Chaitanya, one will find that he is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. No one is greater than or even equal to him. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, Mata paratram nayat kinchid asti hanayan yaya. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Thus is here confirmed that there is no truth higher than Lord Krishna Chaitanya. The impersonal Brahman is the goal of those who cultivate the study of books of transcendental knowledge, and the super soul is the goal of those who perform the yoga practices. One who knows the Supreme Personality of Godhead surpasses realization of both Brahman and Paramatma, because Bhagavan is the ultimate platform of absolute knowledge. The personality of Godhead is the complete form of Sat Achit Ananda, full life, knowledge, and bliss. By realization of the Sat portion of the complete whole, unlimited existence, one realizes the impersonal Brahman aspect of the Lord. By realization of the Chit portion of the complete whole and limited knowledge, one can realize the localized aspect of the Lord, the Paramatma. But neither of these partial realization of the complete whole can help one realize Ananda or complete bliss. Without such a realization of Ananda, knowledge of the Absolute Truth is incomplete. The verse of Caitanya Caritamrta by Krishnadasa Kaviraya Goswami is confirmed by a parallel statement in the Tattva Sandarbha by Srila Jiva Goswami. In the eighth part of Tattva Sandarbha, it is said that the Absolute Truth is sometimes approached as impersonal Brahman, which, although spiritual, is only a part of a representation of the Absolute Truth. Narayana, the predominating deity of Vaikuntha, is to be known as an expansion of Sri Krishna, but Sri Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the object of the transcendental love of all living entities. Text 6. Impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead are three subjects and the glowing effulgence, the partial manifestation and the original form of their three respective predicates. Text 7 A predicate always follows its subject. Now I shall explain the meaning of this verse according to the revealed scriptures. Text 8. Krishna, the original form of the personality of Godhead, is the summum bonum of the all-pervading Vishnu. He is all-perfect knowledge and all-perfect bliss. He is supreme transcendence. Text 9. The whom Srimad Bhagavatam describes as the son of Nanda Maharaja has descended to earth as Lord Chaitanya. According to the rules of rhetorical arrangement for efficient composition in literature, a subject should be mentioned before its predicate. The Vedic literature frequently mentions Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and therefore these three terms are widely known as the subject of transcendental understanding. But it is not widely known that what is approached as the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental body. Nor is it widely known that the Supersoul, or Paramatma, is only a partial representation of Lord Chaitanya, who is identical with Bhagavan himself. Therefore, the description of Brahman as the effulgence of Lord Chaitanya, the Paramatma as his partial representation, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as identical with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must be verified by evidence from authoritative Vedic literatures. The author wants to establish first that the essence of the Vedas is the Vishnu Tattva, the absolute truth. Vishnu, the all-pervading Godhead. The Vishnu Tattva has different categories, of which the highest is Lord Krishna, the ultimate Vishnu Tattva, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita and throughout the Vedic literature. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is described as Nanda Sutta, the son of King Nanda. Krishna Dasa Kaviraya Goswami says that Nanda Sutta has again appeared as Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he bases this statement on his understanding that the Vedic literature concludes there is no difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This the author will prove. If it is thus proved that Sri Krishna is the origin of all tattvas, truths, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and that there is no difference between Sri Krishna and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it will not be difficult to understand that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also the same origin of all tattvas, the same absolute truth as he is revealed to students of different realizations is called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Text 10. In terms of his various manifestations, he is known in three features, called the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the original personality of Godhead. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained the word Bhagavan in his Bhagavad Sudarbha. The personality of Godhead, being full of all conceivable and inconceivable potencies, is the absolute supreme whole. Impersonal Brahman is a partial manifestation of the absolute truth, realized in the absence of such complete potencies. The first syllable of the word Bhagavan is Bha, which means sustainer and protector. The next letter, Ga, means leader, pusher, creator. Ba means dwelling. All living things dwell in the Supreme Lord, as the Supreme Lord dwells within the heart of every living being. Combining all these concepts, the Lord Bhagavan carries the import of inconceivable potency in knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority, Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. Our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. We can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity or of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. If one considers the intelligence needed to orbit man made satellites, one cannot be fooled into thinking that there is not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of the various planetary system. There is no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without their superior arrangements of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in Bhagavad Gita, where the personality of Godhead says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. Were the planets not held in the grip of personality of Godhead, they would all scatter like dust in the air. Modern scientists can only practically explain this inconceivable strength of the personality of Godhead. The potencies of the syllables Bha, Ga, and Va apply in terms of many different meanings. Through his different potent agents, the Lord protects and sustains everything. But he himself personally protects and sustains only his devotees, just as a king personally sustains and protects his own children, while entrusting the protection and sustenance of the state to various administrative agents. The Lord is the leader of his devotees, as we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, which mentions that the personality of Godhead personally instructs his loving devotees how to make certain progress on the path of devotion and thus surely approach the kingdom of God. The Lord is also a recipient of all the adoration offered by his devotees. I apologize, I messed up. He is the objective and the goal. For his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of Godhead. Sometimes he does this by taking away a devotee's material attachments by force or baffling all his material protective agents. For thus the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. The Lord is not directly attached to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, for he is eternally busy in the enjoyment of transcendental bliss with paraphernalia composed of his internal potencies. Yet, as the initiator of the material energy, as well as the marginal potency, the living beings, he expands himself as the Purusha avatars, who are invested with potencies similar to his. The Purusha avatars are also in the category of Bhagavad Tattva because each and every one of them is identical with the original form of the personality of Godhead. The living entities are his infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with him. They are sent into this material world for material enjoyment, to fulfill their desires to be independent individuals, but still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. The Lord deputes himself in the state of supersoul to supervise the arrangements for such material enjoyment. The example of a temporary fear is quite appropriate in this connection. If the citizens of a state assemble in a fear to enjoy for a short period, the government deputes a special officer to supervise it. Such an special officer to supervise it. Such an officer is invested with all governmental power, and therefore he is identical with the government. When the fear is over, there is no need for such an officer, and he returns home. The Paramatma is compared to such an officer. The living beings are not all in all. They are undoubtedly parts of the Supreme Lord, and they are qualitatively one with Him. Yet they are subject to His control. Thus, they are never equal to the Lord or one with Him. The Lord who associates with the living being is the Paramatma, or Supreme Living Being. No one, therefore, should view the tiny living beings and Supreme Living Being to be on the equal level. The all pervading truth that exists externally during this creation, maintenance and annihilation of the material world, and in which the living beings rest in trance, is called the impersonal Brahman. Text 11. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth say that it is non-dual knowledge and it is called impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma and the personality of Godhead. Purport. The Sanskrit verse appears as the 11th verse of the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sita Goswami answers the questions of the sages headed by Shunakar concerning the essence of all scriptural instructions. Tattvavida refers to persons who have knowledge of the absolute truth. They can certainly understand knowledge without duality because they are on the spiritual platform. The absolute truth is known sometimes as Brahman, sometimes as Paramatma, and sometimes as Bhagavan. Persons who are in knowledge of all the truth know that one who tries to approach the absolute simply by mental speculation will ultimately realize the impersonal Brahman, and one who tries to approach absolute through yoga practice will be able to realize Paramatma. But one who has complete knowledge of spiritual understanding realizes the spiritual form of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Devotees of the personality of Godhead know that Sri Krishna, the son of the king of Raja, is the absolute truth. They do not discriminate between Sri Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. One who wants to separate the Lord's absolute name, form, and qualities from the Lord Himself must be understood to be lacking in absolute knowledge. A pure devotee knows that when he chants the transcendental name Krishna, Sri Krishna is present as transcendental sound. He therefore chants with full respect and veneration. When he sees the forms of Sri Krishna, he does not see anything different from the Lord. If one sees otherwise, he must be considered untrained in absolute knowledge. This lack of absolute knowledge is called Maya. One who is not Krishna conscious is ruled by the spell of Maya under the control of the duality of knowledge. In the Absolute, all manifestations of the Supreme Lord are non-dual, just as the multifarious forms of Vishnu, the controller of Maya, are non-dual. Empiric philosophers who pursue the impersonal Brahman accept only the knowledge that the personality of the living entity is not different than from the personality of Supreme Lord. And mystic yogis who try to locate the Paramatma accept only the knowledge that the pure soul is not different from the super soul. The absolute conception of a pure devotee, however, includes all others. A devotee does not see anything except in his relationship with Krishna. Oh my goodness. And therefore his realization is the most perfect of all. Text 12. What the Upanishads call the transcendental impersonal Brahman is the realm of the glowing effulgence of the Supreme Person. Purport. Three mantras of the Mundaka Upanishad give information regarding the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They state, Hiranmaya Parekoshe, Virayam Brahma Niskalam, Tak Shubhram Jyotisam Jyotis, Tat Yad Atma Vidu, Natatra Suryo Bhati Na, Chandra Tarakam, Nema Viduyo Bhanti Kutoyam Agni, Tam Eva Bhagat Tam Anubhati Sarvam, Tasya Bhasa Sarvam Idam Vibhati, Brahma Vedam Armtam Purastad Brahma, Pastad Brahma Dakshinatas Koterana, Adash Kordvam Sa Prastram Brahmai, Vidam Vishwam Idam Varishtam. In the spiritual realm beyond the material covering is the unlimited Brahman effulgence, which is free from material contamination. That effulgent white light is understood by transcendentalists to be the light of all lights. In that realm, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity for illumination. Indeed, whatever illumination appears in the material world is only a reflection of that supreme illumination. That Brahman is in front of the and in back, in the north and south, east and west, and also overhead and below. In other words, that supreme Brahman effulgence spreads throughout both the material and spiritual skies. Text 13. As with the naked eye one cannot know the sun except as a glowing substance, merely by philosophical speculation one cannot understand Lord Krishna's transcendental varieties. Text 14. I worship Govinda, the perennial Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. Purport. This verse appears to be to the Brahma Samrita. Each and every one of the countless universes is full of innumerable planets with different constitutions and atmospheres. All these came from the unlimited non-dual Brahman, or complete whole, which exists in absolute knowledge. The origin of the unlimited Brahman effulgence is the transcendental body of Govinda, who is offered respectful obeisances as the original and supreme personality of Godhead. Text 15. Lord Brahma said, the opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions and millions of universes. That Brahman is but the bodily effulgence of Govinda. Text 16. I worship Govinda, he is my Lord. Only by his grace I am empowered to create the universe. Purport. Although the sun is situated far away from other planets, its rays sustain and maintain them all. Indeed, the sun diffuses its heat and light all over the universe. Similarly, the Supreme Sun, Govinda, diffuses his heat and light everywhere in the form of his different potencies. The sun's heat and light are not different from the sun. In the same way, the unlimited potencies of Govinda are non-different from Govinda himself. Therefore, all-pervasive Brahman is the all-pervasive Govinda. The Bhagavad Gita clearly mentions that the impersonal Brahman is dependent upon Govinda. That is the real conception of absolute knowledge. Text 17. Naked saints and sannyasis who undergo severe physical penances, who can raise the semen to the brain, and who are completely equiposed in Brahman can live in the realm known as Brahmaloka. Purport. In these words from Srimad Bhagavatam, Vata Vasana refers to mendicants who do not care about anything material, including clothing, but who depend wholly on nature. Such sages do not cover their bodies even in severe winter or scorching sunshine. They take great pains not to avoid any kind of bodily suffering, and they live by begging from door to door. They never discharge their semen, either knowingly or unknowingly. By such celibacy, they are able to raise the semen to the brain. Thus, they become most intelligent and develop very sharp memories. Their minds are never disturbed or diverted from contemplation of the absolute truth, nor are they ever contaminated by desire for material enjoyment. By practicing austerities and strict discipline, such medicants attain a neutral state transcendental to the modes of nature and merge into impersonal Brahman. Text 18. He who is described in the Yoga Shastras as the indwelling Supersoul, Atma Antaryami, is also a plenary portion of Govinda's personal expansion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature joyful. His enjoyments or pastimes are completely transcendental. He is the fourth dimension of existence, and for although the material world is measured by the limitations of length, breadth, and height, the Supreme Lord is completely unlimited in his body, form, and existence. He is not personally attached to any of the affairs within the material cosmos. The material world is created by expansion of his Purusha avatars, who direct the aggregate of material energy and all the conditioned souls. By understanding the three expansions of the Purusha, a living entity can transcend the position of knowing only the 24 elements of the material world. One of the expansions of Mahavishnu is Kshirodakshasya Vishnu, the supersoul within every living entity. As the supersoul of the total aggregate of living entities, or the second Purusha, he is known as Garbho Daka Shayi Vishnu. As the creator of original cause of innumerable universes, or the first Purusha who is lying on the causal ocean, he is called Mahavishnu. The three Purushas direct the affairs of the material world. The authorized scriptures direct the individual souls to revive their relationship with the Supersoul. Indeed, the system of yoga is the process of transcending the influence of the material elements by establishing a connection with the Purusha known as Paramatma. One who has thoroughly studied the intricacies of creation can know very easily that this Paramatma is the plenary portion of the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna. Text 19. As the one sun appears reflected in the countless jewels, so Govinda manifests himself as Paramatma in the hearts of all living beings. Purport. The sun is situated in a specific location, but it is reflected in countless jewels and appears in innumerable localized aspects. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although eternally present in his transcendental abode, Goloka Vrindavana, is reflected in everyone's heart as the Super Soul. In the Upanishads, it is said that the Jiva, living entity, and the Paramatma, Super Soul, are like two birds sitting in the same tree. The Super Soul engages the living being in executing fruitive work as a result of his deeds in the past. But the Paramatma has nothing to do with such engagements. As soon as the living being ceases to act in terms of fruitive work and takes to the service of the Lord, the Paramatma, coming to know of his supremacy, he is immediately freed from all designations, and in that pure state, he enters the kingdom of God known as Vaikuntha. The Paramatma or Supersoul, the guide of the individual living beings, does not take part in the fulfilling the desires of the living beings, but he arranges for their fulfillment by material nature. As soon as an individual soul becomes conscious of his eternal relationship with the Supersoul and looks only towards him, he at once becomes free from the entanglements of material enjoyment. Christian philosophers who do not believe in the law of karma put forward the argument that it is absurd to say one must accept the results of the past deeds, of which he has no consciousness. A criminal is first reminded of his misdeeds by witnesses in a law court, and then he is punished. If this is complete forgetfulness, why should a person be punished for his misdeeds? The conception of the Paramatma is an invincible answer to the fallacious arguments. The Paramatma is the witness of the past activities of the individual living being. A man may not remember what he has done in his childhood, but his father, who has seen him grow through different stages of development, certainly remembers. Similarly, the living being undergoes many changes of body through many lives, but the Supersoul is always with him and remembers all his activities despite his evolution through different bodies. Text 20. The personality of Godhead Sri Krishna said, "What more shall I say to you? I lived throughout this cosmic manifestation merely by this single plenary portion." Purport. Describing his own potencies to Arjuna, the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna spoke this verse of the Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Text 21. Grandfather Bhishma said, "As one sun appears differently situated to different seers, so also do you, the unborn, appear differently represented as a Paramatma in every living being. But when a seer knows himself to be one of our own servitors, no longer does he maintain such duality. Thus I am now able to comprehend your eternal forms, knowing well the Paramatma to be only your plenary portion." Purport. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Bhishmadeva, the grandfather of the Kurus, when he was lying on a bed of arrows in the last stage of his life. Arjuna, Krishna, and numberless friends, admirers, relatives, and sages had gathered on the scene as Maharaja Yudhishthira took moral and religious instructions from the dying Bhishma. Just as the final moment arrived for him, Bhishma spoke this verse while looking at Lord Krishna. Just as the one sun is the object of vision of many different persons, so the one partial representation of Lord Krishna, who lives in the heart of every living entity as the Paramatma, is a variously perceived object, one who comes intimately in touch with Lord Krishna by engaging in his eternal service, sees the Supersoul as the localized partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhishma knew the Supersoul to be a partial expansion of Lord Krishna, whom he understood to be the Supreme Unborn Transcendental Form. Text 22. That Govinda personally appears as Chaitanya Goswami. No other Lord is as merciful in delivering the fallen souls. Having described Govinda in terms of his Brahman and Paramatma features, now the author of Sri Caitanya Charitamrta advances his arguments to prove that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the identical personality. The same Lord Sri Krishna, in the garb of the devotee of Sri Krishna, descended into this mortal world to reclaim the fallen human beings who had misunderstood the personality of Godhead. Even after the explanation of Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, directly instructed that the Supreme is a person, that the impersonal Brahman in his glowing effulgence, and that the Paramatma in his partial representation. All men were therefore advised to follow the path of Sri Krishna, leaving aside all mundane isms. Offenders misunderstood this instruction, however, because they are poor fund of knowledge. Thus, by his causeless unlimited mercy, Sri Krishna came again as Sri Chaitanya Goswami. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta most emphatically stresses that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Sri Krishna himself. He is not an expansion of Prakasha or Vilasha forms of Sri Krishna. He is Swayam Rupa Govinda. Apart from the relevant scriptural evidence forwarded by Srila Krishnadasa Kaviraya Goswami, there are innumerable other scriptural statements regarding Lord Chaitanya's being the Supreme Lord Himself. The following examples may be cited. 1. From Chaitanya Upanishad. Gaura Sartma Mahapurusho Mahatma Mahayogi Tri Gunatirtha Sattva Rupo Bhaktim Loke Kashyati. Lord Gaura, who is all-pervading Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears as a great saint and powerful mystic who is above the three modes of nature and is the emblem of transcendental activity. He disseminates the cult of devotion throughout the world. From Svetashvatara Upanishad. Tam Ishvaranam Paramam Maheshwaram Tam Devatnam Paramam Sa Daivadam Patim Patinam Paramam Parastad Vidama Devam Bhuvanasham Idyam. O Supreme Lord, you are the Supreme Maheshwara, the worshipable deity of all the demigods and the Supreme Lord of the all lords. You are controller of all controllers, the personality of Godhead, the Lord of everything worshipable. Mahan Prabhur Vai Purusha Satvasaya Pravavartaka Su Nirmalam Imam Praptim Ishano Yotir Avyaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Mahaprabhu, who disseminates transcendental enlightenment. Just to be in touch with Him is to be in contact with indestructible Brahmayoti. From Mundaka Upanishad. Yada prashya pashyati rukmavarnam kartaramisham purusham brahma yonim. One who sees that golden colored personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Actor, who is the source of the Supreme Brahman, is liberated. From Srimad Bhagavatam. Dhyayam sada paribha gnam abhistab dokham tirthaspadam shiva virinchi nutam saranyam Virtayati ham pranata pala bhavabhi potam Vande maha purusha te charan na ravidam. We offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Him, the Lord, upon whom one should always meditate. He destroys insults to His devotees, He removes the distresses of His devotees, and He satisfies their desires. He, the abode of all holy places and the shelter of all sages, is worshipable by Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. He is the boat of the demigods for crossing the ocean of birth and death. Tyaktva sudustaya sura psita raya lakshmi tram mistha aryava kasa yad agad aranyam maya mrgam dayatyapsitam anmadhavad vande maha purusha te saranara vindam. We offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord, upon whom one should always meditate. He left his householder life, leaving aside his eternal consort, whom even the denizens of heaven adore. He went into the forest to deliver the fallen souls who are put into delusion by material energy. Prahlada said, Itam nritriyang rasideva chihastvan tvarair lokavan vilpayasi hamsi yagat pratipan dharmam maha purusha pasi yuganuvritam hana kalau yad abhavas triyugo tha satvam. My Lord, you kill all the enemies of the world in your multifarious incarnations, in the families of men, animals, demigods, rishis, aquatics, and so on. Thus you illuminate the worlds with transcendental knowledge. In the age of Kali, O Mahapurusha, you sometimes appear in the covered incarnation. Therefore you are known as Tri-Yuga, one who appears in only 3 yugas. From Krishna Yamala Tantra. Punyak Setre Navadvipe Kavisyami Suchi Suta. I shall appear in the holy land of Navadvipa as the son of Sachi Devi. From Vayu Purana. Kalau Sankirtana Brahmhe Bhavisyami Sachi Suta. In the age of Kali, when the Sankirtana movement is inaugurated, I shall descend as the son of Sachi Devi. From Brahma Yumala Tantra. Atavaham dharadhame bhutva madbhakta rupadadki mahyamsa bhavisayami kalau sankirtana game. Sometimes I personally appear on the surface of the world in the garb of devotee. Specifically, I appear as the son of Sachi in Kali Yuga to start the Sankirtana movement. From Ananta Samhita, Ya eva Bhagavan Krishna Radhika Prana Valabha Srstiya Dao Ja Sayaganatho Gaura Asin Maheshwari. The Supreme Person, Sri Krishna Himself, who is the life of Sri Radharani and is Lord of the universe in creation, maintenance and annihilation, appears as Gaura or Maheshwari.
Um, I will come up. It's already one, right? I think it's time to stop. I think so. We can continue after lunch.